Yesterday, I reached out to the White House and spoke to President Trump and asked if he would consider the bipartisan compromise which we are offering to save the Dreamers and to help their families. He invited Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina and me to join him in the Oval Office to make that presentation. We went down to the White House at about 12 o'clock. We were surprised to find that in the 2 hours since my first phone call, he had invited in 5 other members of Congress, senators and congressmen, Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader from California, Congressman Diaz-Balart, Congressman Bob Goodlatte, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, and Senator David Perdue, all of whom were invited to be part of this. The President came into the Oval Office, and Senator Lindsey Graham and I made our presentation. We have been working for 4 months, 6 senators, 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, to create a bipartisan way to deal with the crisis we face, where more than 700,000 Dreamers protected by DACA are going to lose that protection starting March 5th of this year by 1,000 a day. As Senator Graham made his presentation, the President interrupted him several times with questions, and in the course of his comments said things which were hate-filled, vile, and racist. I use those words advisedly. I understand how powerful they are. But I cannot believe that in the history of the White House, in that Oval Office, any president has ever spoken the words that I personally heard our president speak yesterday. You've seen the comments in the press. I have not read one of them that's inaccurate. To no surprise, the president started tweeting this morning denying that he used those words. It is not true. He said these hate-filled things, and he said them repeatedly. When the question was raised about Haitians, for example, we have a group that have temporary protected status in the United States because they were the victims of crises and disasters and political upheaval. The largest group's El Salvadoran, the second is Honduran, and the third is Haitian. And when I mentioned that fact to him, he said, "Haitians? Do we need more Haitians?" And then he went on when we started to describe the immigration from Africa that was being protected in this bipartisan measure. That's when he used these vile and vulgar comments, calling the nations they come from shitholes. The exact word used by the president, not just once, but repeatedly. That was the nature of this conversation. When it came to the issue of, quote, chain migration, I said to the president, do you realize how painful that term is to so many people? African Americans believe that they migrated to America in chains. And when you speak about chain migration, it hurts them personally. And he said, oh, that's a good line. And then when I talked to him about the impact this has on family unification in a nation that values families with the flag as the most important symbols of our future, they scoffed at this notion. It was a heartbreaking moment. But I will tell you this, I'm not going to quit. I have a singular mission, and the mission is this: to give these Dreamers and as many members of their families as possible a chance to be part of America's future in a legal status. I am convinced that there's a majority in both the House and the Senate of Democrats and Republicans who support that concept. I know there's an overwhelming majority of Americans who support that concept. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to prepare our bipartisan agreement for introduction into the Senate next week. If the Republican leadership has a better alternative, bring it forward. If they don't, for goodness sakes, give us a vote. I'll be on the phone today with my Republican colleagues and my Democratic colleagues, begging them to support this measure. Time is running out. We have to get this done. My thought that we might get a bipartisan agreement approved by the White House died yesterday. We have to do this and show leadership in Congress to solve this important challenge.
Senator, because of the president's comments yesterday, is there any hope in your mind that this would motivate other members of Congress to support efforts for the Dreamers in response to his racist comments?
Last night, several Republican senators said that they were embarrassed by what the president said, and they wanted to be more visible in their support of our bipartisan effort. I'm hoping that others will join them. I will tell you, I want to add this for the record. My colleague, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, spoke up and made a direct comment on what the president said. I was very proud of him. It took courage for what he did. And I made my own comments in response to it, but for him to confront the president as he did, literally sitting next to him, took extraordinary political courage, and I respect him for it.
What did you say to the president?
Well, I raised several points. I raised the point about chain migration. I raised the point about if you exclude Haitians from this group of temporary protected people, the conclusion is obvious. These are black people. These are folks who bring a different aspect to temporary protected status than those who are from Central American countries. He knew it, and we all knew it.
What's more disheartening for you, the fact that you heard him say it, or the fact that apparently a large portion of his base believes it?
The most disheartening thing to me is my belief that that was the first time words that hateful had been spoken in the Oval Office of the White House. I think back presidents throughout history, and I cannot imagine a moment where a president sunk to that depth. That's what breaks my heart.
Senator, why not come out of the meeting yesterday, go to the White House press corps, and tell the American people what you heard in the Oval Office? Why let it play out through the media and then address it today?
Well, I can tell you, as I've said before, and I'll say again, I have a singular mission, and that mission is to pass the DREAM Act and to protect these young people. I spoke to my colleagues, and I will continue to. But my goal is not to get a headline. My goal is not to find publicity or make a splash. My goal is to get that done. And everything that I've done and said before and since is with that goal in mind.